the century. It amounts to the world's biggest gas contract worth $400 billion. RT's Katie Pilby reports now from Shanghai.
Yes, the multi-billion-dollar deal has finally been struck here in Shanghai. There are smiles all round. There was a little bit of tension because no one quite knew if it was going to come to the compromise that both Russia and China wanted. We know that China wanted a bargain and Russia was standing firm on the price that they were asking for. So this deal entails Gazprom sending billions of dollars worth of China for the next 30 years or so, for decades to come, and it will change the face of the global gas industry as we know it. And I'm sure Europe is looking on rather cautiously at the moment because they too have been trying to diversify their trade, and this will perhaps give Europe a little less leverage in terms of pricing with Russia from now on. So that's one to watch. We know there's been tensions with sanctions going on as well. So there's politics at play involved with this deal, and that's why everyone has been involved in it. It's great timing for China because we know they've got a 1.3 billion people population and they are gas guzzlers, the biggest consumer, and Russia has the biggest reserves of natural gas. And that's what China wants to get involved with at the moment, because the huge economic expansion that China has experienced over the last 3 decades has come at a cost, and that cost is pollution. You can really feel it in the air. It's a somewhat dirty air. It's called the smog. It's grey and misty, and they want to move towards a cleaner air, which is natural gas. So it's a win-win situation at the moment, and Russia is looking eastwards. We must remember Russia is part of Europe as well as Asia. But as I say, there was a little bit of tension, but also there was confidence in the air that this deal would come through in the end. So as I say, before today, we knew the volume, we knew the route, we know that the pipelines were already in construction. We were just waiting for that all-important price.
And our correspondent Aleksey went to the media conference that followed the signing, and he will be joining us shortly with the full details, so stay tuned. It's all very well talking about mega deals, but it can be quite a challenge to comprehend a sum like $400 billion. So we've put together a graphic to help you and us understand that massive sum. So 400 billion is roughly the GDP of the EU's third largest country, Sweden, or twice the value of everything Qatar produces in a year. It's also enough to send 16,000 space tourists towards the stars, paying for their preparation, launch and stay in orbit. It's also enough to buy every Australian with driving age a brand new Volkswagen Golf, 16 million of them. Or, if you really want to be silly about it, a line of $100 bills put end to end would reach to the moon and back, with enough left to stretch to the moon once again. Let's now get more perspective on the deal now and what it means for China, Russia and the whole world. Joining me now live is editor and publisher of Business New Europe, Ben Aris. Mr. Ben Aris, welcome to RT. Nice to talk to you today. So, is this just an energy contract or something more?
I think it's a real game changer. The people's relationship with China up until now have been based on trade, and China has built up these enormous currency reserves, US dollars, on the basis of that trade. But what we're talking about here is a significant change in the relationship between Russia and China, where they're becoming, in the true sense of the word, strategic partners. And it comes down to the fact that this is a gas deal. In other words, it has to be delivered through pipelines, and those are immovable. So once you build them, you're committed to using them. And more importantly, I think, than just the Russian commitment to supply that gas is that China itself has had very little gas. It doesn't have the domestic pipeline distribution that we have in the EU, having had gas for decades. And so the Chinese, on top of the 400 billion or so that they're going to spend on importing Russian gas, are going to have to spend hundreds and billions of dollars building a gas pipeline network in their own country. And governments don't take that kind of infrastructure commitment lightly. In other words, you have to be sure of your partner. And so there's a change of mentality here that Russia and China are committing to each other to be friends for decades to come. They can't afford to have rows.
But how stable is this relationship with China, though?
It's going to be very stable in so much as, once you've got that energy relationship, that Russia is obliged to deliver the gas, China will become dependent on it. And this will underpin any rows that they have. They're going to have to be more mooted, they're going to have to be more considerate. You know, the need to compromise is going to be there. I mean, we can see with the relationships with Europe that, you know, that things have come to a very unpleasant showdown between the West and the East. Nevertheless, the gas is still going from Russia to Europe. They're talking about diversifying, but you know, it's going to take at least 2 years for Europe to find alternative sources. And so they're forced into a point where they have to talk to each other. But the Chinese-Russian deal is much more done on a much more sort of mutual cooperation basis. You know, both sides are happy to commit themselves to this.
The president of the European Commission has just sent Vladimir Putin a letter saying he hopes Russia will keep its obligations to Europe. What reason does the EU have to worry then?
Well, I've said before, the problem with Russia's supply of gas to Europe is not Russia. Russia is not turning the gas off to Europe, it's turning the gas off to Ukraine, and for a very simple reason, is that Ukraine has not been paying its bills. I mean, at the end of the day, this is a commercial relationship, and that Ukraine has to buy and pay for the gas it imports. And as it's unable to do that, it's kind of normal to turn off the gas until you get your money. Having said that, there's a political dimension to this as well. You know, if you cut off Ukraine, you cut off Europe, and that causes huge problems for everyone at the end of the pipes. And so you could argue that Russia should be a bit more considerate. But this problem of how Ukraine is going to pay for its gas remains. And unless the EU is willing to step up and finance it, then this is going to remain a problem going forward.
And on the other hand, the EU and the US have alienated Russia to a great extent over Ukraine. Didn't they effectively push Moscow towards Beijing then?
Well, that's the irony, isn't it? The sanction policy is designed, it seems, to isolate Russia, to punish it for its actions in Ukraine, you know. And the upshot of this has actually been to push Russia into the arms of China. And China and Russia have never been friends. I mean, even in the communist era, Russia and China failed to unite against, you know, the united front of NATO and the West. And the sanctions and the policy with Russia have convinced it to overcome its traditional misgivings and to form this alliance. I mean, it's China's first ever real ally, if you like, and they've never managed to be friends with anyone. And so here they are tying up with another BRIC country, and the BRIC countries are going to be source, and already are the source of global growth. So Russia's hitching its wagon to one of the fastest and biggest markets in the world, and you've got to ask strategically, you know, is that a stupid thing to do? I don't think it is.
The sum we've been given is $400 billion. Absolutely astonishing. Does that sheer number tell you anything?
Well, it's a measure of the size of the commitment. I mean, what we're waiting to hear, which will sort of put some nuance into this relationship, is the actual price they agree on. Russians have been holding out for the kind of price that they charge European customers, somewhere between $350 and $380 per 1,000 cubic meters. Whereas I'm sure China's been holding out for the discount that Russia's friends in the CIS get, which is more on the order of $180 to $200. And so where this price actually settles will say something about to what extent Russia's been over the barrel because of the political situation, what discount it's been forced to concede. But having said all of that, at the end of the day, this is going to mean significant and steady revenues for the Russian budget at a time when it's struggling economically, and will secure the future. It gives it a nice solid economic basis on which to build. So it's a good thing in that sense.
Ben Aries, editor and publisher of the Business New Europe news website. Mr. Aries, thank you very much indeed for your time.